Howdy music lovers, Tom from Blakgraz here. Welcome to another episode of Guitar N Gab. That was a small piece of my song Swingin'. So if you get a chance, check out Blakgraz Swingin' on all the streaming platforms and every social media platform. You can actually link it to videos of your own. In this video, I want to talk about a really cool video that Rick Beato did. I'm a big fan of his work, and I really appreciate what he just did in a video. So I'm going to talk about that in this video, and maybe a little bit of what else is going on with Rufus, with my elbows and other stuff, and anything that happens to pop up. So let's get right to it. Howdy music lovers, welcome to another episode of Guitar N Gab. This is Rascal, our security dog, and he is making a guest cameo appearance in this video today. We are at a truck stop and there are some puppies outside that he would like to go and visit. So he is trying to convince me that I'll be good. I'll go out and I'll just say hi and we'll just have fun. I won't do anything.
They could be my new besties.
I won't get too excited. I'll be good and I'm a good puppy and I'll behave myself, and that's what he's thinking and he's saying to me telepathically, and I'm telling him he has to wait. We are going to go out here in just a few minutes though, as soon as we're done. So in this video I wanted to talk about this Rick Beato video, but before I get started I want to give a shout out to Boots and Bourbon out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Super cool t-shirt, amazing cool place, wonderful people. And if you get a chance, make sure you stop by there and buy lots of food and lots of drinks and tip a lot. They were really, really cool people, and I'd love to see that place just get more and more busy.
Owner's a fellow Texan.
Yeah, and the owner happens to be from Texas also, so we do have a kind of an affinity for that. Also today I'm playing Stella. This is one of my custom build guitars from Vaughn Shannon at thintheherdguitars.com, and custom build out of Austin, Texas, or you can buy them at JD Southside on the south side of San Antonio, Texas. JD Southside Music Store is the exclusive custom build distributor, in-store distributor, so you can actually go and play some there and check them out there. Now Vaughn will build you a guitar, literally custom guitar, however you describe it or however you would like to design it. But he does have some models that he pre-makes, and this was a one of one, believe it or not. And then we made some additional modifications. We put on stainless steel frets and an on-off switch, and she just sings now. It's amazing what this guitar can do. All right, so let's get into the Rick Beato video. If you're not familiar with Rick Beato on YouTube or any other platform, he's a musician, producer. He's got had a lot of success. His channel is huge. He has superstars on there for interviews all the time because he's got all the right connections and he's got a really long history of success for obvious reasons. And so I've been kind of following what he does, and I take his suggestions or his point of view or his perspective very often. I have the same perspective concerning some things with the music industry, and then there are some things that I don't completely agree with. However, when it comes to music, I have found with Rick Beato, I have a very similar taste in songwriting and production, in appreciation of artists who put good effort forth. So there's a lot to be said for finding that common ground. And so when I watch his videos, I'm always trying to discern, is this something that I agree with or that I don't agree with? And he just did a video about, I think it's Johannes Brahms. It's Brahms, but I think his first name is Johannes Brahms. Classical music and these certain pieces that he pulled from to show how certain notes move pieces of music. He called them surprises from his interview with Sting, right? And I know Rick Beato has played some of his own original material, guitar work, and he has a lot of surprises in his work, and it's kind of like progressive jazz almost. But in this video, he actually was taking the Brahms pieces, the first part and then the second part, and showing how there are these musical surprises. And basically what he was describing has been known to me for years as what's called a melodic hook. Something that happens on an instrument that is catchy. It catches people's attention. His perspective on it with the Brahms pieces was that this note wouldn't normally show up there in this progression because of the way these chords run together, but Brahms used it in a way to pull the chords to a different progression or a different arrangement, which is pretty common. They're called passing tones. But also he was pointing out how these melodic hooks get your attention. Every few seconds there's this other really interesting thing that happens but what he didn't talk about, well, first off, I should say this. I really am glad to see him promoting on a channel like his with such wide appeal and so many viewers the beauty and real super intellect of classical music. Classical music has to be some of the most advanced music ever written. And I mean modern artists too, modern composers now too. Not just the classics, not just Beethoven and Bach and Tchaikovsky and people like that. But there are people out now doing things with instruments and sound and melody, and because one of the things about a symphony is it has to generate, it has to move air, right? Without amplifiers. These instruments are just played, and sure, there's mics on stage, but the symphony has to create the shape of the sound, and then those microphones just basically duplicate that, or amplify it. That's the word. Amplifiers, they amplify the sound, and then of course make it fit to whatever stadium or theater that they're playing in, so it still represents it well. So a classical sound person is actually the best example of what sound should be. The band, the symphony, the orchestra makes the shape of the air, and then the sound company just takes that and expands it to the entire space where the listeners are. So that's that's close to my heart, that a sound man's job is just basically to take the sound that you make as a band and fill the room with it, not to produce it, not to make the drums sound better, not to make the bass sound better, or bring it in the guitars and EQ the guitars the way they think it should be EQ'd, and to work all the special effects on the vocal. That's not a sound man's job. That's a producer's job. Anyway, so back to Rick Beato exposing the world to the beauty of classical music again, especially hopefully younger generations that follow him because of all the different people that he is associated with. All these superstars, they know this stuff. All the people he interviews who are already famous, they know this stuff. That's why their songs are so catchy from the very beginning, right? They have all of the elements that are required for, not just melodic hooks that are instrumental, but good melodies, good arrangement, good production, good chord changes, interesting movements, all of the elements, interesting rhythm. See, that's one of the things, that's what I was going to say. One of the things he didn't cover in the idea of these surprises coming along is it's not just a note that gets played. Often it's the way a rhythm occurs, because music, at least the way I was taught, and I like to believe that I'm a huge fan of classical music, but also of many other styles of music as well, which is why Blakgraz has so many different styles of songs recorded. One of the key elements is in making music is the idea that it's not a hypothesis, this was a perspective that I've had all of my life ever since I first heard it. The whole point of music is to create and release tension. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, if I play an E chord, right, that's home. And if I play a G chord, that's away from home. And then it pulls me back to home, right? Now here's another really more obvious example. Now, if I play a note E on the guitar, E on the guitar, E at a different spot, but then I go right? That sounds like the beginning of a Metallica song, right? But it gets your attention. That's what he was calling a surprise, something you don't expect. If I play and then suddenly go, now you're like, whoa, that has to go somewhere else now, because I've moved away from home by a half step. I'm down to a D sharp, right? That's tension. That's pulling the rubber band. And then when I bring it back, now I've released the tension, right? So the whole point of what he was showing is that as these chords progress, there are points where more tension was created, either rhythmically or melodically, or even just with the use of a different instrument, an interesting sound, something that had a different timbre than what had been occurring before. Instead of all French horns and strings, suddenly a bassoon came in, or suddenly there was a flute really high, something really high. Those are the things that stand out. Well, now why is that true? It's really obvious if you think about it. If you were to look at all of the different pictures and memes and videos that show how if you're the one individual walking the other way when everybody else is walking this way, you're the one that you catch everyone's eye because you're doing something different. If you're looking out over a field of perfectly green grass and there is one tree in the middle of it, where do your eyes go? To the tree, not to all of the amazing, beautiful grass that is miraculously very similar to each other and creates this beautiful, perfect carpet. No, that's not where your eyes go. Your eye goes to the one tree standing in the middle of that field. So the idea there is the same thing. You establish home, and then you create tension, and then you resolve it. That's the whole point of music. That's all it does. Create and release tension. Now, how do you create and release tension? Well, you can do it with notes, or you can do it with rhythm. See, I should have just gone. That turns into a different meter, but I wanted to keep it in 4. That change in rhythm, that's all you need. Or here's a good example. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Just subdividing. That's our drummers love that stuff. They're really good at subdividing. Rhythm guitar players and bass players should be good at subdividing, but we're not always. Guitar players have a tendency to rush, bass players have a tendency to kind of lay back, and drummers sometimes will rush through fills unless they're really, really good, like Annika Miles, and they just stay rock solid on the rhythm, But every once in a while you run into somebody who's really good at staying in time, no matter what they're doing. But the point there is to create a surprise, that, as Rick Beato calls it. And he's just quoting, as he said, he's just quoting Sting. He said in the first 8 bars, Sting said in the first 8 bars, if something doesn't surprise me, then I've stopped listening, right? So how do you do that? Well, in one of my songs, Dear Mrs. Avery, lots of space, lots of Now, if you see there's a whole bunch of different stuff that happen. Not only are there chord changes and guitar riffs that stick out and that are easy to remember, but there's other rhythmic things that are occurring that kind of make the song roll along. Now, here's another good example of tension, creating tension. The song doesn't do anything else right there. It just waits. Sometimes pauses, sometimes silence. If you're playing along, sometimes nothing is the greatest way to create tension, because people are expecting the song to continue, and if you stop and do nothing, they're like, whoa, what happened? Did something go wrong? And then you start the song again. Now they're listening again, right? So it doesn't have to be super complex and fancy runs and, you know, all these different notes and lots of different chords. You don't need all that. All you need are simple, interesting, catchy, different. Now, concerning different, you know, a lot of people say, well, there's nothing that hasn't been done. No, there's always something new to be done, because the human spirit, the human soul is always creating and expanding from what has been done. It might sound like or be close to something similar, but it's definitely something different because it's coming from somebody else. Anyway, the point being, check out Rick Beato's video and pay close attention to his focus on the classical side of music, and look at that as an opportunity to study more about classical music. Whether you play punk music, country music, rap music, anything, it doesn't matter. All of the elements of a successful hit song are in every famous classical tune you could ever find. And if you pick it apart the right way, or find ways to apply those classical elements to a song that you're working on, what you will suddenly find is that people start to take a real strong interest in the songs that you're writing, which is exactly what I've been trying to do for years. And now it seems like it's actually starting to work. Blakgraz has a lot of songs that at shows people seem to latch onto very quickly. But I can't take credit for that. I'm just borrowing from all of the famous artists that came before me. Not just the Eagles, not just Jimi Hendrix, not just Stevie Ray Vaughan, not just Journey, not just Alice in Chains, not just Santana, but also from all of the classical music that I love, right?
Well, you got introduced by your mom, the appreciation, and that's why you learned not just how to play, but how to write, and decided to write more expansively.
She introduced me. So we lived in Ohio, well, Athens, Ohio, which is Ohio University, and she used to take me to concerts. I got to see the Japanese Koto drummers. I got to see Billy Idol as my first rock concert ever. First time, before he was just on the way to being huge. And he was playing this little tiny auditorium at Ohio University. I got to see orchestras. She took me to bluegrass bands. She took me to see country acts. I mean, I got to see, I was into punk music. I was into hardcore old style blues. I mean, it was anything I could get my hands on, basically. Anything that I could, you know, really, I could feel the energy in it, you know. I was a sucker for pop music too. My sisters loved, you know, 70s disco and, you know, stuff like that. And so I was very oriented in pop. What's the best way to describe it? The sensibility of pop music. Because pop music is going for the throat, right? Go for the catchiest, the hookiest, the thing that people will latch onto immediately. Not experimental, maybe to some degree, but they always go with what they know for sure people are going to buy, right? That's pop music industry. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of innovation that occurs there too, using the things that they know will work. So it's just, you know, basically people who are really good at what they do, doing it over and over and making a great living doing it and having a lot of fun. So I don't see anything wrong with that.
No.
And so the notion there is that my influences draw from a lot of different styles and a lot of different influences thanks to the exposure that my mom gave me, and then also my curiosity with music and how things are put together and the different ways that you can manipulate sound, the different ways that you can shape sound. A lot of my favorite bands used to be very progressive, like lots of Yes and Genesis, Kansas, and, you know, really, really great big bands now that everybody just is like, oh my God, they're so amazing. But they were new at a certain point, and they didn't always have it all together. Even Queen, you know, when they first came out with their stuff, Everybody ripped them apart, you know, especially when they did Bohemian Rhapsody. Oh, it's so pretentious. It was way too long. It can't be played on the radio. This is ridiculous. Who do they think they are? And it becomes, you know, the staple that it is now.
Metallica even, they were very long.
Oh man, yeah.
Too.
When Metallica first came out and they were just teenagers touring with Ozzy Osbourne, their songs were like 8 and 10 minutes long of what sounded like to me the same thing over and over and over again. Ooh yeah, ooh, it just wasn't my thing, right? It just wasn't my thing, because I was into all of these other ways. But to their credit, they really meant what they were doing. They were passionate about it, and no one had ever done it that way before, right?
And someone helped them.
And then along came a producer who said, why are you making this song 8 minutes? This is a great song. Let's chop it down to about 3.5, 4 minutes. And guess which song it was that made them so huge? They went from being a cult phenomenon that everybody who loved heavy metal knew who Metallica was, to the global phenomenon that they are now, which is, you know, everybody and their brother lays claim to being fans of Metallica. The song was Enter Sandman, and it was a producer, a skilled arranger, songwriter, producer like Rick Beato, who said, why don't you just shorten this part, put this arrangement here, do this here, this, and then end. I mean, this is a really great song. Sure enough, they did it. Mm-hmm. They had a huge radio hit, a heavy metal, hardcore heavy metal band back then with a radio hit. Everybody wanted to hear it. There's your melodic hook. Create tension, release it. Create tension, release it. So, I mean, that's a really good example, you know, of being true to yourself and experimenting with sound and arrangement and the way you do things, but then also being practical so that you can actually make a good living and have fun making a good living. All of your songs don't have to be 10 or 12 or 15 minutes long. All of my songs are not, you know, Show Me the Way is 7.5 minutes, but every time I play that song live, nobody ever mentions how long it is, because I've used every trick I know. Melodic hooks, rhythm hooks, you know, similar sounding this, hooks, choruses, words that have meaning, special to me. Every trick I know fit in that song to be able to keep people's attention for 7.5 minutes.
And that's a song you dreamed too.
It is a song I dreamed.
That's the interesting part.
That's the curious story about that one in particular. I think Rick Beato would get a kick out of that, because I dreamed it in a complete arrangement with words and everything, but I didn't write it down right away. It was like 2 weeks of it just being in my head. It wouldn't get out of my head, so I finally wrote it down. But that's just a good example of experimenting with sound and arrangement and how long you can get away with. You know, look at these classical tunes. They go on for, you know, forever. Some are like 25 minutes long. It's like listening to the Grateful Dead, you know.
But there's a story. You can hear the progression.
There's movements, right? In those classical pieces, it's a title, but there's multiple movements that occur in a single title. It's almost like reading the chapters to a book. So the same thing, that's exactly what I did with Show Me the Way. It has the beginning, and then it has the first verse, and then it has, you know, all the different arrangement parts, but each part is a different movement, right? And I use all those musical tricks and production tricks to keep people's attention the entire time. So I think the way I'd like to finish this video is to thank Rick Beato for placing such a really wonderful, positive focus on classical music and the value of classical music for any songwriter who's trying to write now, regardless of the style you're trying to write in. The tricks from classical music can be applied to any style of music, even industrial, even pop punk, any style. Because the things he's talking about and the things that are used in classical music are the foundational hooks that make music worth listening to.
Well, there's a reason why they're considered not just the classics, but they're still listened to today, hundreds of years later, thousands of years later.
Yeah, and you could even get into the energetic side, but we won't do that in this video because then it'd be another hour. But there are things occurring in classical music that is worth your while to study, and I'm so glad that Rick Beato brought people's attention to that. Not just because there's amazing chord changes or interesting notes, but because what he's doing is bringing a broader awareness to a very large audience of the value of the lessons that can be learned there.
Well, not just with the classical side, but the value of learning a different style of what you prefer or like to play or write in, because it's going to expand you as a performer, as a songwriter, a musician as a whole. I mean, it's like with me, I'm an author, and there's a lot of people that, stick to only one genre. Nothing against it, but I don't eat only apples every day. I can't only read or watch one type of story every day. So I'm a multi-genre author on purpose, because it also helps me expand my writing and my perspective and my storytelling ability.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of being here, is to expand. You could, if you listen to Bob Dylan or even Neil Young, people are always making fun of Bob Dylan and Neil Young, the eve of destruction. He's not really singing, and he's coming through his nose. That's not true. If you really listen to what he's singing, he actually is just entering the notes in a very unusual way, a way that nobody else has done before, and anytime anybody does it after, they accuse you of sounding like Bob Dylan. Mm-hmm. Ask Steeler's Wheel. So Neil Young, same thing. He's always pitchy and his guitar's out of tune, and when he solos, is this. And they try to claim that he didn't know how to play. The fact of the matter is, and I only know this from personal experience because I was in a Crosby, Stills, Nash Young and a Neil Young tribute.
And we knew someone who knew his son or something too, remember?
Yeah, but that's not important. What I'm trying to say is, when I had to study Neil Young closely, what I discovered is that not only was he an amazing songwriter and an amazing singer and guitarist, but that what he was doing that sounded like noise to some people was he was experimenting with where you could go with electric guitar. Before there was all these other, high-flung idols of guitar. Before Steve Vai, before, even Frank Zappa, before Eddie Van Halen or Stevie Ray Vaughan, before all those guys, right? He was trying to do things with the guitar that no one had ever done before. And of course it's going to be weird and different. But if you go and try and play it, good luck reproducing it, right? Good luck trying to sound like Neil Young. And it isn't because he doesn't know how to play. It's because he was trying to do something no one had done before. Mm-hmm. And that is very often what happens with new artists, right? You try to do something that's never been done before, and people are like, I don't know this song. Play My Girl. God, please, that's from the 60s already. All right, I'll tell you what. Right after My Girl, I'm going to play some Beethoven, okay? Just to keep you happy. I didn't mean that old. Well, you might as well be. It's almost 100 years, so. Well, 40, it's 80. Yeah, 80. We're past 50, so it's on the verge of 100 years. Anyway, the point being, thank you to Rick Beato for drawing people's attention, especially any of your listeners who are musicians, to the value of that classical music and the lessons that can be learned from, not just from Brahms, but from all of the classics. And then I dare you to go start looking for new composers and what they're doing. Now, mind you, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the modern movement where it almost sounds like there's too much dissonance. I like things that are beautiful. And that's one of the reasons I was glad that Rick picked the Brahms piece, because it's beautiful. I like things that sound good and make you feel good. But there are a lot of folks out there experimenting with sound in the classical world as well. See what they're doing. Then go look into Bob Dylan, go look into Neil Young, go look into Bob Marley. Why were his songs so popular? What were the hooks, the melodic hooks, the rhythmic hooks, the vocal hooks? What were the arrangements, right? And then watch all of them live if you can. If you can go and see a symphony play a Brahms tune in person. As a musician, your life will never be the same.
Well, we got to see Karina Barama. That was beautiful.
That was amazing. Karina Barama in the Hollywood Bowl.
At the Hollywood Bowl. The vocals were spot on, like they were just having a conversation.
It was extraordinary to hear.
Vocalists nailed every single piece.
It was extraordinary to hear that piece of music live. You cannot appreciate a symphony or an orchestra or any band for that matter until you go and see them live and feel the energy coming off the stage. So kudos to Rick Beato. Thanks for listening this far. If you like this content, please do us a huge favor. Click like and subscribe. Please check out our links down below. We've got CDs and merch for sale online and at shows. We've got a little bit of merch left, and then we're going to be doing a new order and get some new stuff in. Also, if you could do me a huge favor, follow us on all of the different streaming platforms that you listen to, or on any of the social media platforms. We're on everything. But even more important than that, please come out to a live show. I'd love to shake your hand and thank you in person for supporting what we do. All right, everybody, see you next time.